When was the last time you heard anyone talk about Royal Enfield with the passion it once inspired? Almost never. And that reveals everything. There was a time when this name represented pure mechanical honesty. A 500 cubic centimeter bullet could run for decades with basic tools and spare parts you could carry in a backpack. Riders crossed continents on machines that never needed a computer diagnostic. The company built 1.2 million motorcycles annually by 2023, generating record revenues. But somewhere between the balance sheets and modernization plans, Royal Enfield made a choice that would alienate the very people who made them legendary. So today's question is simple. How did a company that perfected mechanical simplicity convince itself that complexity was progress? And what happens when you betray the core principle that built your empire? Royal Enfield's story begins in Redditch, England, where the company transformed from a bicycle manufacturer to a pioneering force in motorcycles during the early 20th century. Their reputation was not built on flashy features or cutting-edge design, but rather on uncompromising durability. Military contracts during both World War I and World War II cemented their status as machines that could withstand punishment few others could endure. The company's unofficial motto told you everything. Built like a gun, goes like a bullet. This was not just clever marketing. It was a design philosophy that prioritized mechanical robustness over all else. When the operation transferred to India in 1955, as Madras Motors began local production, this fundamental approach remained unchanged. What made Royal Enfield truly special was their commitment to mechanical simplicity. Single-cylinder engines with minimal moving parts meant fewer components that could fail. The entire toolkit could fit under the seat, allowing riders to perform almost any repair by the roadside, anywhere in the world. There were no electronics, no computers, just mechanical reliability that transcended language barriers and technical expertise. Perhaps most remarkably, parts interchangeability across decades of production meant that a component manufactured in 1965 might still fit perfectly on a motorcycle built in 1985. This was not planned obsolescence, it was planned permanence. The community that formed around these machines was unlike any other in motorcycling. Riders specifically chose Enfields not despite their simplicity, but because of it. A global network of enthusiasts could fix each other's bikes with basic tools and knowledge passed down through generations. Adventure riders trusted these machines to carry them across continents, through environments where electronic failure would mean being stranded for days. Mechanics worldwide understood the technology intuitively, without requiring specialized training or proprietary diagnostic equipment. This created an ecosystem of support that extended far beyond the company's official service network. By the early 2000s, Royal Enfield had carved out a unique market position. They dominated the simple motorcycle segment globally, attracting a cult following among riders who actively rejected modern complexity. Their sales remained steady, catering to customers who valued reliability over features. Most tellingly, brand loyalty spanned generations of families, fathers teaching sons how to maintain machines designed to outlive them both. As the motorcycle market evolved into the 21st century, competing manufacturers aggressively added anti-lock braking systems, fuel injection, and electronic systems as standard features. Safety regulations in major markets increasingly required electronic compliance, with some regions mandating those systems and emissions controls that were difficult to achieve through purely mechanical means. Demographics were shifting too. Younger buyers expected modern features and connectivity, having grown up in a digital world where mechanical understanding was no longer common knowledge. Insurance companies began offering discounts for bikes equipped with modern safety electronics, creating financial incentives to abandon simpler designs. Following Eicher Motors' acquisition in 1994, Royal Enfield faced mounting pressure. The new ownership brought ambitious growth expectations that would be difficult to achieve while remaining in the niche enthusiast market. Manufacturing costs continued rising, while Royal Enfield tried to maintain its traditional pricing model, squeezing margins from both directions. Investors demanded modernization and market expansion, treating the company's heritage as a marketing asset rather than a guiding philosophy. What they failed to recognize was the fundamental connection between Royal Enfield's mechanical simplicity and its customer loyalty. The company also faced what might be called the reliability paradox. Traditional bullets ran forever, but had quirks that required knowledge and occasional roadside attention. New customers wanted perfect reliability without developing mechanical skills, creating tension between heritage and modern expectations. The service network was already struggling with traditional maintenance requirements, and quality control issues in Indian production were affecting the brand's reputation in international markets. Something had to change. The question was what and how much. Under Siddhartha Lal, the chief executive officer, a bold modernization vision took shape. The plan to premiumize the brand would position Royal Enfield to compete directly with Harley-Davidson and Triumph, rather than budget alternatives. Management believed they could maintain the company's heritage appeal while adding modern features that would attract a broader customer base. With a massive $1.2 billion investment in new platforms and technology, Royal Enfield committed to a future that looked very different from its past. The decision point had arrived. The company chose a path that would fundamentally alter its identity. Royal Enfield's strategic pivot was built around what they called their Heritage Plus modern approach. The idea seemed sound. Keep the classic styling that attracted customers to the brand, while adding modern electronics, fuel injection, and safety systems underneath the vintage appearance. This would allow them to reposition as a premium heritage brand rather than a budget option, with marketing that emphasized authentic heritage combined with contemporary reliability. The classic silhouette would remain, but everything beneath the surface would change dramatically. The technology integration plan was comprehensive. Carburetors would be replaced with fuel injection systems. ABS, electronic ignition, and digital displays would become standard features. Ride-by-wire throttle and traction control would follow, creating motorcycles that maintained the visual appearance of mechanical simplicity, while actually becoming significantly more complex. Alongside these technical changes, Royal Enfield implemented a limited edition revenue model that created artificial scarcity through special paint schemes and badges. Multiple variants of the same basic platform could be released with premium pricing, targeting collectors willing to pay extra for exclusivity. This would generate higher margins without requiring new engineering development. Internally, this strategic shift was not universally embraced. Engineering teams expressed concerns about the reliability of the new electronic systems, especially given the harsh conditions many Royal Enfield motorcycles operated in globally. The service network warned they were unprepared for the diagnostic equipment requirements these sophisticated systems would demand. Longtime employees questioned whether this departure from the company's core philosophy would alienate their most loyal customers. Early feedback from their community indicated a strong preference for maintaining mechanical simplicity, rather than adding electronic features. Despite these warnings, Royal Enfield crossed the point of no return when they committed to discontinuing all carbureted models by 2020. Investment in a new Chennai factory optimized for electronic production signaled this was not a temporary experiment but a permanent transformation. The company's commitment to European market expansion required full regulatory compliance that the old mechanical systems simply could not achieve. Leadership made public statements about evolving beyond the past, framing simplicity as something to overcome rather than a core value to preserve. The die was cast. Royal Enfield would become a different company, hoping their customers would follow them into this new era. Between 2017 and 2020, Royal Enfield rolled out their transformed lineup. The Interceptor 650 and Continental GT 650 served as flagship modern platforms, representing what the company called modern classics. The traditional Classic 350 and Bullet 350 were converted to fuel injection, fundamentally changing motorcycles that had remained essentially unchanged for decades. The Meteor 350 emerged as a completely new platform replacing the beloved Thunderbird, while the Himalayan adventure bike arrived with a full electronic package designed to compete with much more expensive European alternatives. Each new model pushed the brand further from its mechanical roots while maintaining familiar aesthetic elements. The marketing campaign centered around the concept of pure motorcycling, emphasizing heritage authenticity despite the mechanical departures. Celebrity endorsements and adventure documentaries portrayed the new machines conquering challenging terrain, while social media focused on lifestyle and heritage storytelling that connected new models to the company's storied past. Dealer network expansion targeted premium locations rather than the rural and independent shops that had traditionally served the Royal Enfield community, signaling a shift toward urban customers with higher disposable income. Initial reception seemed promising. Sales numbers climbed and media reviews praised the improved refinement and reliability. The company successfully attracted new customers from the premium motorcycle segment who had previously dismissed Royal Enfield as too crude or basic. International expansion in Europe and the Americas exceeded expectations, suggesting the strategy was working. Yet beneath the surface, warning signs appeared. Longtime customers began expressing concern about the increased complexity of the new models, particularly the inability to perform repairs without specialized tools and knowledge. Service costs increased dramatically for electronic repairs compared to the mechanical systems they replaced. Diagnostic equipment requirements strained the dealer network, especially in developing markets where Royal Enfield had traditionally been strongest. Online forums began hosting heated discussions about old versus new Royal Enfields, with community members dividing into camps of purists and modernists. What had begun as a strategic evolution was rapidly becoming something more divisive. A fundamental identity crisis threatened the very qualities that had made Royal Enfield unique in the motorcycle landscape. The backlash began in earnest when the new model's reliability issues became impossible to ignore. Electronic system failures required specialized diagnostic equipment that was often unavailable outside major urban centers. Fuel injection problems left riders stranded in remote locations where a simple carburetor could have been cleaned and fixed in minutes. Anti-lock braking systems and sensor failures created safety concerns more serious than the mechanical quirks of the older models. Most alarmingly, service costs skyrocketed to 3 to 4 times higher than traditional mechanical repairs, with parts availability becoming a serious issue in many regions. The community that had defined Royal Enfield for decades began to fracture. Veteran owners sold their new bikes and returned to older models, sometimes paying premium prices for well-maintained pre-electronic bullets. Online forums became battlegrounds between purists and modernists, with heated debates about what constituted an authentic Royal Enfield experience. Independent mechanics who had serviced these motorcycles for generations found themselves unable to work on the new electronic systems without expensive proprietary equipment. Adventure riders who had relied on the mechanical simplicity of Royal Enfields for remote journeys began abandoning the brand for simpler alternatives that could be fixed with basic tools. The limited edition strategy backfired spectacularly when customers discovered these special editions were merely cosmetic changes applied to motorcycles with identical mechanical components and the same reliability issues. The collector market collapsed as quality problems became widespread, with social media campaigns calling out what critics labeled heritage washing, using visual nostalgia to mask fundamental changes to the product's core identity. Financial indicators revealed the depth of the problem. Warranty claims increased by 40% year over year as electronic systems failed prematurely. Customer satisfaction scores declined in key markets, while dealer complaints about service complexity and training costs mounted. Perhaps most telling, secondary market values for newer models dropped significantly compared to well-maintained classics, inverting the normal depreciation curve. The authenticity question became unavoidable. Motorcycle journalists who had initially praised the modernization began questioning the company's heritage claims. Comparisons to other manufacturers who had maintained mechanical simplicity alongside modern options highlighted the false dichotomy Royal Enfield had created. Customer testimonials about preferring older, simpler models flooded online communities. Industry analysts began discussing Royal Enfield's identity crisis openly, questioning whether the company understood what had made them special in the first place. The issue was not modernization itself. It was the complete abandonment of the mechanical simplicity that had defined the brand for generations. As reliability problems persisted, a customer exodus began. Long-term owners who had previously purchased multiple Royal Enfields switched to Honda or Yamaha, or dedicated themselves to vintage restoration. The adventure riding community that had championed the brand for its go-anywhere simplicity migrated to KTM and other platforms that balanced modern features with mechanical accessibility. Mechanics who had built careers servicing Royal Enfields began specializing in models built before 2017 only, refusing to work on the newer machines that required proprietary diagnostics. Enthusiast clubs that had once unified around the brand split between classic and modern bike owners, with some clubs explicitly excluding newer models from their events. Royal Enfield's market position deteriorated despite growing sales numbers. The brand lost its differentiation from other premium motorcycle manufacturers, now competing directly with Harley-Davidson and Triumph without the unique value proposition that had previously defined it. Price increases alienated budget-conscious, traditional customers without fully convincing premium buyers to choose Royal Enfield over established luxury brands. Marketing materials reflected this confusion, simultaneously emphasizing heritage while defending modernization decisions that undermined that very heritage. The mixed messaging created cognitive dissonance that sophisticated consumers immediately recognized. The service network faced its own crisis. Dealers required increasingly expensive diagnostic equipment and specialized training, creating barriers to entry that many could not overcome. Independent mechanics found themselves unable to service newer models, and rural service availability declined dramatically. Customer complaints about urban-only service accessibility became common, particularly from adventure riders in remote areas. Financially, the picture was complex. Revenue growth driven by higher prices initially masked the unit sales decline, creating the illusion of success. However, profit margins were squeezed by mounting warranty claims and higher service costs. Research and development spending increased without proportional improvements in customer satisfaction, as the company chased solutions to problems their previous designs had never had. Royal Enfield's stock performance began lagging motorcycle industry averages as investors recognized the fundamental challenges the company faced. The leadership team attempted various pivots, including reintroducing simpler variants with limited success and investing heavily in service network improvements to address reliability concerns. New model development teams struggled to balance simplicity with regulatory compliance requirements, but the core issue remained unresolved. Royal Enfield had abandoned the principle that had made them legendary, without fully understanding why customers had chosen them in the first place. Royal Enfield's transformation reveals three critical mistakes that serve as warnings for any heritage brand considering modernization. First, they fundamentally misunderstood their customer value proposition. Their customers chose Royal Enfield specifically for simplicity, not despite it. The added complexity solved problems customers did not have, while creating new problems they had specifically sought to avoid. By confusing market positioning with actual customer needs, Royal Enfield treated heritage as appearance rather than as a philosophy. Second, they fell into what might be called the heritage authenticity paradox. They marketed authentic heritage while systematically removing the heritage elements that define the experience. By keeping visual styling but eliminating functional heritage, they created cognitive dissonance between brand promise and product reality. They underestimated customers' ability to distinguish cosmetic heritage from substantive heritage. Third, the limited edition exploitation strategy damaged trust, using collector mentality to move what was essentially defective inventory and creating artificial scarcity without addressing quality issues, betrayed the community's trust. Charging premium prices for cosmetic changes while the underlying platform deteriorated prioritized short-term revenue over long-term brand integrity. What should they have done differently? The alternatives seem clear in retrospect. Royal Enfield could have maintained simple mechanical options alongside modern variants, giving customers choice rather than forcing modernization. They could have invested in improving traditional technology rather than replacing it entirely, making carburetors cleaner and more efficient instead of abandoning them. Transparency about modernization trade-offs would have respected customers' intelligence and agency. Most importantly, they should have respected the community that built the brand's reputation, rather than treating that community as an obstacle to overcome. Other manufacturers have navigated similar challenges more successfully. Honda maintains simple, reliable motorcycles alongside complex ones, recognizing different customer needs. Triumph balances heritage styling with optional modern features that can be bypassed when simplicity is required. Harley-Davidson's gradual evolution respected core customer values, even while introducing new technology. Toyota's approach to hybrid technology demonstrates how innovation can occur without abandoning reliability as a core principle. Today, Royal Enfield generates record revenues while continuing to lose its core community. Brand recognition remains high, but customer loyalty has fractured along generational and philosophical lines. New customers are attracted to the brand's heritage aesthetic without understanding or valuing the mechanical simplicity that built that heritage. Financial success masks a fundamental identity crisis. A company that no longer knows what it stands for beyond styling cues and marketing narratives. The question now is whether Royal Enfield can rebuild trust with the community that made them legendary, or if that community will continue dispersing to alternatives that better reflect their values. Will new customers develop the same multi-generational loyalty as those Royal Enfield alienated? Is it even possible to be both simple and modern in today's regulatory environment? Most critically, what happens when your solution becomes precisely the problem your customers were specifically trying to avoid? Royal Enfield's story reveals a universal business lesson. Modernization, without understanding why customers chose you originally, is fundamentally misguided. Revenue growth can temporarily hide the destruction of your brand foundation, but the consequences eventually emerge. Heritage is not something you claim through marketing. It is earned through consistency of purpose and values. The customers who made Royal Enfield legendary weren't simply buying motorcycles. They were buying into a philosophy of mechanical honesty that made them self-sufficient and connected them to a global community. When that philosophy was abandoned, the sales numbers continued climbing, even as the soul of the brand faded away. In the end, Royal Enfield achieved exactly what its modernization strategy intended. It became a different company selling to different customers. The tragedy isn't that they changed, but that they convinced themselves nothing important was being lost in the process. They traded a passionate community for a larger customer base, mechanical honesty for electronic features, and repairable simplicity for disposable complexity. They gave up the very qualities that made their motorcycles easy to own and easy to fix, in exchange for features that often left owners dependent on technicians. The machines still carry the Royal Enfield name, but ask anyone who knew them before the transformation. Something essential has been lost, and that loss reveals everything about what happens when a company forgets what made them special in the first place. Royal Enfield didn't need to betray its heritage to survive. It chose to. In doing so, it joined countless other brands that abandoned their core principles in pursuit of growth, only to discover too late that those principles were the very foundation their success was built upon. What's your view? Can heritage brands modernize while staying true to their core values? Has Royal Enfield lost its soul, or simply evolved for a new generation? The debate continues, but one thing remains certain: mechanical simplicity, once abandoned, is nearly impossible to reclaim.